Levi, I've been talking to Cory quite a bit here recently. We'll start with you. What makes this one so special? It's a generic question, but I think you're going to be able to give it a good spin.
Yeah. So, I mean, to the folks of Iowa, it is another Cy-Hawk game. I mean, it's always special to us, but what makes it a big deal now is that it's kind of a generic answer, but it is because they're both in the top 10. It's not just the first ranked Cy-Hawk game ever where they're both ranked, but they're both in the top 10. They're both really good teams. One in red's a little bit better, but that's okay. And it's just, you get game day coming. That's adding to this whole thing, which is kind of funny because we're a little bit conflicted on the whole ESPN game day thing after this all Big 12 realignment thing. We're like, game day. Yeah. But it shows the growth of the rivalry and the nationalized too, that they've put game day essentially at two consecutive Cy-Hawk games because they didn't play last year. So they've two Cy-Hawk games in a row game day is at. And that shows you where the national attention is now on this game, where it used to just be like, I would say like, it's just fun, like meme football game that happens in September. And it still kind of is, but now it's just fun. And it actually matters now because at least one team, it probably, potentially both, just depending on how everything shake out, would be like potentially using this as a part of a playoff resume too. So it goes beyond that, where it's not just a game that happens in September, but it can really set the tone for the rest of your season and for the rest of both. And then we can also shit talk Iowa when they lose on Saturday. So.
Did he just say potentially one of these teams is using this for a playoff resume? I don't know. I mean, I think Iowa State could make the playoff if they were to, win every game. And don't discount your own team, Levi.
Well, you see, the problem is I'm not sure they let teams in the playoff that have a broken jug machine for a quarterback. So I'm not sure that's going to jive super well.
All right, listen, I made it clear. We talked before we came on here. If the claws come out tonight, that's all right. We take nothing personally.
It's
here
a good time. We're here for
football,
a good time.
Yeah. So my major storylines going into this, Mark. Obviously, like Levi said, game day's here. I'm excited about it. I think it's great for college football, and just so everybody knows, I'm a homer as much as any Hawkeye fan is. But if you watch my prediction on my podcast, which will be released later on this evening, I'm not going to give anything away, but I'll just say I'm not a homer. All right. So just stick with that and then watch my show later. But I think game day being here, I think it's going to be kind of an interesting environment. Last time Iowa was here, you had the altercation with the band and the fans. And just for the record, Levi, I'm not one-sided on that. I thought the Iowa band completely instigated that. I mean, if you watch the tape, that's clear.
Yeah, that was a weird situation. That was a whole deal.
I think we can all agree that just because the band is marching through you and blowing their trumpets and their horns, that does not give you an excuse for beating the crap out of them.
Sure, someone being addicted doesn't mean they can just just punch you in the face, but But it's kind of two sides of the same coin on that one. I don't know. That was a really weird situation.
It was, but I think just everything last 2 years ago, the delays. I think that game went over 6 hours long. I mean, I know people who are Iowa State season ticket holders that went home and never came back and then missed the end of the game. Which, if you're a Cyclone fan, you're probably happy you missed the end of the game. But I want to divert this kind of back to an appearance you made, Levi, back in, what was it, probably like May or something. And you were running through the Iowa, and this is just because I did my research. I'm not lobbying for Iowa State quotes, but back in, May or June, you were on this show with Mark Rogers himself, voice of college football, and you were running through the Iowa State schedule. And I swear you spent like 5 minutes talking about, UNI, they're extremely valuable win on the schedule. They're respected across the country. And then you got to Iowa and you're like, people kind of respect him, but not really. And I'm just like, I'm watching this and I'm like, he's being serious. He's being legitimate. I'm like, I could not believe it. And so I will throw that out now. I thought it was hilarious. If you're an Iowa fan, if you want to, get your blood boiling, go back and watch Levi's appearance a few months ago on the show.
But was I wrong about the UNI thing?
Well, you say it's a valuable game on the schedule. It's I think you and I both know it's not a valuable game.
I'd have to go back and look at the. I'd have to go look at the verbatim what I actually said verbatim. But
yeah, you and I both know it's not a valuable game on the schedule.
No, yeah, not from a national perspective. No, you're right.
No, I mean
it's a valuable game for Iowa State because it helps us kind of get a barometer of where our fundamentals and stuff like that, where the base personnel is, what the lines look like, stuff like that. Because Iowa fans are well familiar as well. You do not mess around with you and I.
I totally. I mean, I remember 2009, the 2 block kicks in Kinnick. I get it. That is a game that Iowa has dropped. I wish they still played it, but it is a lose-lose. I mean, Iowa State's had their fair share of trouble with North Dakota State. Iowa lost to North Dakota State in 2016. Those are never good scenarios because you gain nothing from them. And I'll ask you first: how are you feeling last week? Because on our post-game show for Iowa, Indiana, we had former Iowa assistant coach Don Patterson on, and he was talking about the 16-10. Iowa State win over UNI, and he sort of just dismissed it as being a vanilla. He didn't watch it, but he was assuming it was a vanilla call game from Campbell. You and I had a chance to win the game the last drive, correct? I mean, how are you feeling post game?
Well, yes and no. I mean, they did technically by the scoreline, yes. I will say in the game, I was collapsing in on myself saying, oh my God, we suck. What the hell's going on? But after the game, after I went and watched it, I mean, even in the game, like as miserable as I was at the time about how the offense was playing, the defense was lights out. And you and I didn't cross into, they didn't make it into the red zone the entire game. And they only crossed the 50 like 3 or 4 times or something like that. And one of them was like to the 49. Or something like that. I mean, the UNI's offense was doing nothing at all. And I think I don't know what the percentage was, but most like a good chunk of their yards for the whole game came on that last drive when Iowa State was playing prevent. So I never felt like we were in danger of losing the game because the defense was so good.
So my question is then to you, and again, I'm not saying one way or the other, but it is a question to you. Should Iowa State fans be concerned that an offense which features arguably the best tight end in the country in Charlie Kolar, which I get wasn't playing on Saturday, but you've got Chase Allen behind him, correct? That was what he was playing Saturday. Yep. You've got arguably the best running back in the country in Breece Hall. You've got a veteran quarterback in Brock Purdy. You've got a guy who's playing at linebacker who seems like he's been here since the 90s in Mike Rose. And yet and I get that's defense, but I'm saying the offense can't pull away from an FCS opponent. I mean, I get it. It was a vanilla call game from Campbell, but should that be a concern for Cyclone fans?
I think that was a game where it's one of those. It's never as bad as it's never as bad as it seems. So in the moment and during the game, I was like, this is not good. Like this doesn't look good at all. But there's after I went and rewatched the games, there was a few things that I noticed. For one, there was a couple kind of like weird little things that happened that killed some drives. Like one of them, Tariq Milton slipped while he was turning on a screen that would have been for a first down, but he slipped. And then there was another one that Joe Skates caught it and then it was punched out or something he caught it and then it popped out and went backwards like 8 yards. And they ruled it a fumble and that Iowa State had recovered, but they didn't review it for whatever reason, even though it was pretty obviously an incompletion and it should have been ruled an incompletion. So instead of 2nd and 6 or 2nd and 5 or whatever it would have been, it was 2nd and 15. And that was a huge, that killed that drive. Tariq Milton's slip killed that drive. Jalen Noel's little punch that went out of freak punch fumble that went out of bounds, wherever that one kind of killed that drive. So even if you only take 2 of those and say Iowa State goes down and score of those, now you're at 30-10, which is a very different looking score line. And the offensive line wasn't as good as we thought they were going to be. Worth noting that they had Trevor Downing back who didn't play all last year, so they still need time to gel. And offensive lines especially take the jump from week 1 to week 2, and it tracks extremely well under Matt Campbell. Week 1 to week 2, the offensive line usually improves dramatically because they've got some tape against people that are actually trying to beat them, and they don't already know what they're doing. They've got tape on that now, so. Breece Hall kind of did what he could with what room he had. He didn't have a lot of room. He did what he could. They used him in the passing game, got him some receptions in the passing game, which was good. But the things that I was looking for, the one thing that I was really curious to watch because it happened the last 2 seasons, which is part of Iowa State's rough starts, was that Brock Purdy was generally not good at all the last 2 season openers. This one, Brock was good. He was downright good. He was 78% passing. Didn't throw an interception. Never even looked like he was close to throwing an interception. There was no bad reads. There was no taking unnecessary gambles. He didn't have like a ton of yards because they threw some shorter routes with Xavier Hutchinson and Tariq Milton and the screens underneath and stuff like that. But he was really efficient. He ran when he needed to. He stood in the pocket when he needed to. That was a really, really clean game for Brock, which was a really nice thing to see in a season opener. So I kind of actually got what I wanted to see out of that from that perspective, as far as what the prospectus looks like going forward. I know the offensive line is going to be there. Brees is going to be there. Charlie Kolar didn't play, which is a really, really important thing. He's the best tight end in the country. And when you lose that receiving threat, plus also and I would say it's offense too. He has a similar effect to like what Steph Curry does with the Warriors, where he doesn't actually have to have the ball in his hands or Klay Thompson actually might be a better analogy, where he doesn't actually have to have the ball in his hands for the defense to really have to pay attention and to dedicate a lot of attention to him. And when you have Charlie Kolar in there, even if it's a running play, you have to almost keep a linebacker out there because there's enough film on it. You have to keep a linebacker back there in case he slips out on an RPO. Because he's done that and he's punished. Texas Tech has had a lot of trouble defending that against Charlie Kolar. So he commands attention from at least one or two individual players on the defense, and that changes your spacing. That changes who can play in the box and who can't. That changes a lot of different things. So having Charlie Kolar back is another huge, huge reason that Iowa State's result last weekend did not change my opinion about it. Well, actually, either result last weekend did not change my opinion about the game this weekend.
I agree. I totally agree. If people watched my season preview, I'm sticking with the same winner of this game. And again, you'll have to go back and watch that if you want to know who I'm picking. But I'm picking the same winner, and you may be surprised at who I'm picking. But with that being said, I remember a year ago, and of course, I'm not an ESPN Plus subscriber because Iowa gets all its games televised, Levi. So you'll have to fill me in on the gaps here. But I know a year ago, Louisiana Lafayette really took advantage of Iowa State and special teams. I'm assuming Campbell has cleaned that up. Obviously, Iowa fans know that those struggles were also prevalent in 2019 with the running into your own man, which kind of fumbled away the game for Iowa against Iowa. So did that clean up, I guess, for Iowa State?
Parts of it have. So one of the big things and one of the huge problem was with that, and what kind of went underrated last year was that Iowa State was definitely dead last in the Power Five, and actually one of the worst in the FBS at touchbacks on kickoffs. They were like 13%, like there's almost nothing. Well, they have Andrew Mevis now, who put his first kickoff went to like the 5-yard line, but every single other one of them after that went out of the back of the end zone. So he was at 80% touchbacks his last game, and he looks like he can do that consistently. So if you remember, Louisiana at least was 2 of their touchdowns were on special teams, and one of them, at least, I can't remember if both of them were kick returns or one of them was a kick return, but at least one of them was a kick return. You can eliminate that entirely by just kicking out of the back of the end zone. It seems like a really simple fix, but if you can just eliminate kick returns altogether, you eliminate that entire mode of scoring for the other team, which is a problem that Iowa State has had, because when you have to cover every single kickoff, eventually you're going to give one up. And last year that Louisiana turned out to be a good team. We don't need to like kind of rehash that whole thing, but like the special teams was an issue. Mevis fixes a lot of that with the kickoffs and by being able to actually rack up touchbacks on an extremely consistent basis. And he actually took a long field goal last week too and drained it, and it looked really good. He had a lot of space left. He could have made it from 55 or 60 if he really wanted to with the leg he put that on that kick. So I would say it's got a short kicker in Connor Sally still, letting him really hone in on the short distances where he's good, and then letting Andrew Mevis take the long ones. And I feel really good about the kicking game right now. Punting game, not as confident. Corey Dunn is fine. He's not going to be like, he's got the leg, and we've seen it like a couple times that he can, when he gets a good hold of one, he can be a really good punter. But he is really inconsistent, and it is a bit worrying for me, especially going into a game where a lot of people, and kind of myself, are expecting a pretty defensive game, lots of punting, things like that.
And don't forget who you're punting to. Maybe Iowa State fans don't know who Charlie Jones is, but
I think they do now. Yeah, after last week.
And now, of course, he got dinged up a little bit last week against Indiana. I think, according to Kirk Ferentz, he's fine. He's good to go. He's practicing, so that's good news. But he is a dangerous guy and a guy who can be a difference maker, not only on special teams, or excuse me, with punt returning, but also with kick returning.
And the punt coverage unit doesn't worry me. Like, I'm not worried. Like, not to say that I'm not ever worried about it, but like I'm not as worried about Charlie Jones doing some damage on the punt coverage, because the punt coverage team has always been really good. What I'm worried about is literally like shanking punts out and
which is what Indiana did. That's exactly
giving
what
Iowa the ball at
did.
like the 40-yard line. Like that. I mean, that is a legitimate concern of mine. Where you could end up giving Iowa good field position without them ever having to touch the ball. That is a concern of mine. If Cory is even fine on Saturday, it doesn't have to have any boomers, but if he doesn't shank something, I'll feel a lot better, and that can kind of hide that weak spot. So that's a little bit of a concern. But as far as like our return games and stuff like that, I mean, I don't know. Kick returns are so infrequent anymore. Like actual kick returns are so infrequent anymore that I don't know. Iowa State doesn't really return that many kicks. And even punt returns, they typically usually just fair catch them and go on offense. So it's kind of like they'll do it if they can, but it's not really a huge part of Iowa State's game plan necessarily.
Mark, while I have this on my mind, I want to vent a little about a little something, and keep in mind that I'm a guy I've lived in Ames for 6 years. I'm happy to call this home. I really get tired, and I'm the biggest, again, Homer Hawk fan that you're going to meet. I promise you that. All right. But I really do get tired of this hate week crap that I keep hearing. I get tired of Iowa State fans. I get tired of Iowa fans. I get tired of the stoking of the fire. I got tired of hearing Tyler Goodson, and I'm sure Iowa State fans heard it this week when he said it was their Super Bowl.
Sure,
I don't know why you got to say that. I really don't know why you're providing bulletin board material for one of the best coaches.
Which is what it is. Like, that's what it is.
What it is. I mean, and there's no beating around the bush on this. That's what it is. You're providing bulletin board material for the other team. I don't get it. Fans
even Kirk Ferentz was like, no. Like, I mean, I guess I hope he's right, but he's not.
Look, if you're confident, that's great. You got swagger. Yeah. I'm all about trash talking after the fact, but to me as a player, like, I just don't get why you do that. The other thing about it is, I hear Iowa fans on Twitter this week saying, "Oh, Iowa's going to win by 30." We had a comment here just a little bit ago. "Oh, Iowa State, won by 6 to an FCS team. We blew out number 7." That doesn't mean anything. All right, college football. First of all, it's week 1, right. And as we know, Iowa State has a reputation of looking like a totally different team week 1 to week 2. Iowa does to a degree, but I feel like that's more of an Iowa State thing than an Iowa thing. I think it's a little bit overrated in Iowa City. And the score, if you look at the score and you listen to our postgame show with Don Patterson Saturday, the score of the Iowa game Saturday was a bit deceiving. Because
that it was, yeah.
You cannot count, and I'll rehash this. I've rehashed it before. I'll say it again. You cannot count on multiple pick sixes, okay?
You can't even count on one.
Right. By the same player. You can't count on probably 3 interceptions. Probably, I don't really know. Maybe you get 3 turnovers against a Kent State and Colorado State, but that's quite an accomplishment at this level. You're not going to be able to rely on that. And let's be honest, Michael Penix was a shell of himself.
I've always thought Michael Penix is like, he's a good runner, he's a good athlete and stuff like that.
He didn't run at all, though. He didn't run.
Right. And as a passer, I've always thought he's pretty mediocre or maybe just slightly above average.
I think I don't think he's comfortable yet. But here's the deal. I think he allowed the crowd. The crowd was electric Saturday in Iowa City, and I think he really got rattled early, and it snowballed. That happens. And so you look at Iowa's offense. You've got two pick sixes. So there's 14 points. You've got one 56-yard burst from Goodson. There's your 21 points. You've got 2 kicks from Caleb Shudak. If I'm doing my math right, that's 27. And the other one was the QB draw. That was a good drive, but it was a short field.
Sure.
So I want to pump the brakes on Iowa fans, and I think a lot of Iowa fans are in their right mind on this. That this is not. I don't know how Iowa fans could possibly think this, but this is not an obvious. Oh, Iowa's going to win this game hands down. I just don't. I don't get how Iowa fans who've been watching the game of college football for as many years. I know a lot of Iowa fans who are very educated, and I get they get caught up in the emotion. They get caught up in the rivalry. But I was just not impressed. Now, what did you call Petrus earlier? You said something. You called
it was a broken jugs machine.
Say that again.
A broken jugs machine. But to be fair, that line is actually taken from Chris Hassel, who works for CBS. He's a big time Hawk fan.
I know.
He called Spencer Petras a broken jugs machine.
Yeah, well, nobody cares about Chris Hassel. Okay, let's just establish that right off the bat.
I like that quote though. I'm
sure you like the quote.
I'm a big fan of that quote.
I think a lot of Iowa fans have sort of tossed Chris Hassel to the side. No offense to him. But we liked him back during his Nebraska Cornhusker days or Cornholer days.
When he was on.
But ever since he went to ESPN and CBS, he's sort of lost me. But Petras hasn't played well. You've got a situation where he's never played in front of a crowd. That's something to monitor. Now, he did look more comfortable Saturday. I said that during my podcast this week as well. He looked more comfortable. He looked like he had a better command of the offense. I still think he's missing receivers down the field. It's hard to tell because I wasn't at the game Saturday, but it looks like he's getting rid of the ball when he can. And this is something Don said as well. When he has an opportunity to pick up 3-4 yards, I don't want to say panicking, but he's opting to throw the ball away and he's wasting downs. So there was some improvement, but he's not there yet. I do wonder about the crowd is going to be ridiculous on
There's a
Saturday.
couple things
I
with
love Jack
Petras.
Price.
There's a couple things with Petras specifically that if I was an Iowa fan as an Iowa State fan, I'm looking like this is a place thing you can just play. The crowd is definitely. I mean, it's not just a crowd; it's a very hostile crowd. It's a loud crowd. It's his first true road game with an actual crowd,
right?
And it's not just any crowd; it's Iowa State, and
we're avid fans, yeah.
But then also part of the rivalry, too. It's going to be there's more fervor to it. Two, you look last week too, he was 13 of 27 passing. Does that sound right? 13 of 27 passing against. I mean, Indiana's defense is good, but I would argue that they're not really in the same conversation as Iowa State's defense.
The secondary, I think, is good. That's the first thing. So that makes a difference. I'm not making excuse for Spencer, but he did have several drops. I know Sam Laporta had at least one or two. I know Jackson Ritter had at least one. There were drops to go around. And you could also say that potentially there was some vanilla in the offensive play calling.
Sure. Yeah.
But that doesn't excuse that does not excuse, there was an overthrow to Tyler Goodson on basically a wheel route out of the backfield that was just egregious. There were some of those, but there were more last year against Purdue. So in the season opener last year. So he has improved in certain regards, but let's be completely honest. Brock Purdy hasn't been that great against Iowa. So
he's only played him once and he was good against, he was good again in 2019. He's only played him once,
but you guys scored 17 points.
I mean, but
I wouldn't say that's good.
Yes.
He had two big, and they were off two.
He also
plays.
had the last possession was taken away from him. I mean,
we're judging what he did though. He had two big plays down the field. One on a trick play on a freshman cornerback who, I give Campbell credit for taking advantage of the situation, but on a freshman corner, right? Because Iowa was down a man at corner. They get the fake play to what's the guy, the big receiver for Iowa State that caught.
Well, he was Michael Petway was the receiver on that.
Yeah. And then the guy that you guys still have, the speedster,
Tariq Milton. Yeah, Milton
caught the other one. I give you guys credit for that, but I'm just saying those were the only two big plays that I really remember.
Sure.
He did have a costly fumble, as I recall. Jaimin Colbert punched one out in that game.
Yes, he did.
So I'm not saying, and you're right. They've only had the one matchup, but that wasn't.
And worth noting too is who else didn't play that game? Breece Hall. Breece Hall was not playing yet when last time they played Iowa. Yeah, the weird game with the weather. And I think everybody watching up until that last play, up until that muff punt, I know everybody in the stadium was thinking Iowa State's going to go down and score because they were, especially the last the fourth quarter and the last part of the third quarter, they were just tearing through Iowa's defense. I mean, they were picking up chunk yardage. They were just tearing it apart. And I thought, I was for sure. I don't know about
tearing it apart.
Oh, I think they were. But anyways,
get Mark. I was a voice of reason in here, tearing it apart, and you scored.
This is Cyhawk. This is no place for a voice of reason.
Yeah, that's true. You're right on that. I'll give you that.
But anyways, I know a lot of people were very confident that Iowa State was going to go down and drive that. I know there was a lot of Iowa fans I've talked to thought they were.
Well, yeah, but it didn't happen. So
that's but those are not Brock Purdy's fault. But anyways,
okay.
Iowa's only played him once. They have really essentially not played Breece Hall yet.
Hold on a second. That's like saying if I hadn't married my wife that I would have married Jessica Simpson. We don't know because she wasn't interested and I wasn't interested. That doesn't mean I would have had I been interested.
All right, but that doesn't change that they've only played Brock once. They've only played Brock once. That's a fact. That is an objective fact.
That is a fact. But you're saying, well, you can't. You're saying Brock didn't get an opportunity. Had he
on the
gotten
last
an
drive,
opportunity, he would have taken it. We don't know that.
we don't
That's all
know.
hypothetical.
You are correct. Anyways,
all right.
This 2021 team is the offensive line is eons better. The 2021 team is dramatically better than the 2019 team. It just is.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, absolutely should be. No, there's no question.
Yeah. I mean, all of the people that are back are better. Offensive line is so much better. You actually have Brees Hall now instead of Sheldon Croney, I think was the starter of that game. And I have doubts on what Iowa's offense looks like in this, though, because outside of that 53-yard run or whatever, 52 or 53 or whatever it was, I would average like 3 yards a carry on the ground. Three Iowa, 3 yards a carry.
Down your starting guard, that's the first thing. Lost your starting left tackle of 4 years in Alaric Jackson. You lost your right tackle in Mark
Are they
Caliber.
playing now? Is Alaric Jackson playing
No,
next
but I'm
week?
just saying it's game one. For a bunch of young guys,
Yes,
you've got
right.
a new left tackle, you got a new right tackle, and you've got a new right guard.
Yep.
So, or excuse me, a new left
How
guard.
do you feel about that left tackle going up against Will McDonald?
I think Mason Richmond, here's the deal. All right. I don't feel good about it. But I feel better about pressure coming from the outside as opposed to pressure coming from the inside. I'm more comfortable. Obviously, I could ask you, whoever your tackles are, I could ask you how you feel about them going up against Tyler Linderbaum. But again, I would rather pressure coming up from the outsides than I would on the insides, especially for a guy like Petrus who can at least scoot forward in the pocket and make a throw. I tell you, if Iowa had the guard issues that they had in 2019, and I'm honestly surprised that Iowa State wasn't able to take advantage of it more in that game, because later on, boy, Michigan, Penn State, Iowa had problems up the middle all season, and they've kind of shored those problems up. If that had happened with a guy like Petrus, who's even more of a statue than Stanley, I would be very, very concerned. Now, I'm concerned. There's no question about it. I look up and down Iowa State's roster. It's not just defensive line. I don't know that I've ever seen, I don't know. You probably know because you're in Iowa State, everything, but is there data that is indicative or excuse me, that indicates Iowa's age? Because I have not, when I look up and down Iowa State's depth chart, like everybody's a senior. I've never seen a roster like this.
Iowa State is a
or
crazy
depth
old, it's a crazy experience.
I'm serious, Mark. I'm not
Yes.
exaggerating this. You need to look at Iowa State's depth chart.
Iowa State
is ridiculous.
Maybe one of the oldest teams in college football. They have a ton of experience, and Will McDonald has never started a game.
And yet Iowa State fans make fun of Jordan Bohannon because he's been at Iowa for 6 years. Like, it's just,
that's not the only reason we make fun of Jordan Bohannon, to be fair.
I agree with that. We won't get, we can have a whole different show on that.
Fair
And
enough.
This is
Fair
the
enough.
voice of college football.